It's a real pleasure to be here. I want to echo what Harold has said about Bill Crowley. It's such a joy for a Yellow Dog Democrat like me to come back to this area and know that this is an area that overwhelmingly went for Barack Obama, that overwhelmingly goes for Democratic candidates, and yet has the discretion and sense and wisdom to choose when we have primary battles as to who they will give their backing to, and that it has become a priceless kind of a gem of a jewel for Democratic candidates to get the endorsement of the New Trier Township Democratic Organization. It doesn't come with the imprimatur of a Chicago Ward Committeeman that does what he's told. It comes with the imprimatur of a lot of workers and people who are dedicated to the idea that the Democratic Party in Illinois can stand for good things and stand for good government. And what Harold said and what Bill said about this kind of anguish and joy that we are going through at this point. So proud of the fact that we have sent the first Illinoisan in over 100 years to Washington as a president, and we've sent the very best we have, someone who's had a distinguished career in Illinois government and in national government, because of the people of Illinois. And once again, New Trier was one of the first Democratic organizations to endorse Barack's candidacy when he ran for the Senate. And yet at the same time, we have to live through the ignominy of a governor who has followed those same tracks, a member of the state legislature, a member of the Congress, and unfortunately our governor, fortunately our former governor, who seemed to have done all the same things but came out with such different results than a Barack Obama. And that's kind of the conundrum of Illinois politics. We've always had this ability to somehow overcome the machine politics and the corruption and disgrace that so many people in politics go through by electing people like a Paul Simon and a Gene Hurley, and yet at the same time electing governors who end up in jail. I wish it was just that the last two that ended up in jail, but you know, I have served under 4 governors that have spent time, one term in the State House and 1 term in the penitentiary, and it's not a comfortable kind of a legacy to look back on. Why is it? Why is it that over 50 years ago, when Paul Simon and Gene Hurley were introducing ethics bills in the state legislature, and some of them even passed, but why is it that we continue to have this terrible history of corruption in Illinois? I can remember that at the time the current and choice villain of the political arena was Paul Powell. Some of you may remember that name, shoebox Paul Powell, who died with $800,000 in a shoebox in his hotel room. Amazing how politicians earning only $5,000 a year can amass that kind of money in a shoebox, no less. But I remember Powell on the floor of the House one time when Paul Simon had successfully passed an ethics bill, and Powell, who was then, I think, the speaker, said, "You can't pass an ethics bill that I can't beat." And he was right, unfortunately, because all the ethics bills we seemed to pass and all the reforms we seemed to adopt always were short of the mark. And I'd like to tell you just one story of the most current short of the mark reform effort that I was involved in. Cindi will remember this. I'll introduce her in a moment. But when the unlamented Governor Blagojevich was first elected in 2002, he organized a task force to consult with him on ethics. Cindi Canary was a member. I was a member. There were a lot of the usual suspects were members, Dawn Clark-Netsch, representatives of the Better Government Association. And we came up with some pretty good proposals, including some that actually were put into law. The State Board of Ethics, which is there. It hasn't quite been as active as we hope, but it's there. The inspectors general were beefed up and given more power and authority, and they've done some good. There was one proposal, the task force divided into subcommittees, and there was one proposal that the representative of the Better Government Association, Jay Stewart, and I were on, which is to deal with the pay for play that you've heard so much about recently, to do something about reforming the system of people going in and making hefty contributions to the governor or other state officials and then getting hefty contracts from the state in return. And we came up with a very simple proposal, and not at all a radical one. We proposed that the state adopt the federal law. The federal law says that anyone who has a contract with the federal government may not contribute to the political campaigns of any federal official. Now, has it worked perfectly? Of course not. There are still scandals like the Abramoff scandal. There are the current investigations that are going on about the House Appropriations Committee. But at least it has put some restrictions on how crass the pay-for-play activities can be. You don't auction off a contract for from the state in return for how big a campaign contribution you get, which is basically what some of the tapes involving Governor Blagojevich show, that it wasn't only that he was trying to sell off the Senate seat, but he had offered to have the state buy Wrigley Field if he could only get a big enough contribution from Sam Zell. And he was going to do other things for various people who wanted contracts or benefits from the state of Illinois. So Jay Stewart and I worked out this proposal, a very simple one, as I said, that simply tracked the federal law, which prohibits people from who get contracts in the federal government from making contributions to candidates for federal office. And it went up as part of the package of other government reforms that we were proposing. And the package came back from the governor, in which he had approved most of them, but significantly, the pay-for-play proposal was dropped from the package. We went through another revision of the reforms, and we got, Jay and I were successful in getting the pay-for-play proposal back in the package, and it went up again. And mysteriously, it came back with most of the reforms approved, but not the pay-for-play. This was in 2002. And how naive could we be that why was this so-called reform governor who was going to clean up the state of Illinois, and boy, did he ever, was so opposed to the idea of banning pay-for-play. It's a modest change. I wish I could tell you that if we only could get rid of pay-for-play, that would solve all of the historical problems that the state of Illinois has had in how to govern its affairs. It wouldn't, but it's an important step in the right direction, particularly after the most recent history where we've had this governor who simply has turned the state office into a bazaar, not B-I-Z, but a B-A-Z bazaar, where everything is for sale.